So we're all aspiring to have a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. Can we actually change if we have a fixed mindset in something?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's really important to change that because part of a growth mindset has to do with if you dedicate yourself to something, you can learn it.
I've been feeling a bit more empathy for our learners because I've been focusing more on my Portuguese learning. Such a beautiful language.
Would you say that Portuguese is a hard language for you?
Yes and no. I think because I speak other Latin languages, this makes it easy and hard because, I have a wide base from Catalan and Spanish, for example, that I can, if there's something I don't know in Portuguese, I can usually guess it. But often this is a double-edged sword because oftentimes there's something that doesn't translate directly that you can't exactly carry over, or there's a different way of saying something. For example, I actually was speaking with my friend today, and I was trying to say that my dad is a lawyer, and he, when I was pretty much my entire life, he's worked for himself. I was trying to say he didn't work in a law firm, and I didn't know how you say this. In Spanish, it's bufete. So I said bufete, and he understood buquete or buquete, something like that, which is means something not, I don't know, that you wouldn't say in a formal crowd in Brazil, apparently. Yeah. Those kind of fun mix-ups.
But it's nice to have that attitude of playfulness, right? I mean, you're just having fun with the language,
Exactly.
and
you have to laugh at yourself.
Laugh at yourself, right? I mean, yeah, we call it growth mindset, right?
Exactly, which is what we're talking all about today. But I would just say, as a final note there, making a friend who speaks the language that you're trying to learn, I mean, that's one of the best ways that you can motivate yourself to want to speak it better. So if you're not yet, you can use the RealLife English app, which is, a super easy way. Just pressing a button, you can connect with other English learners. You might make an English speaking friend there. And, if you start having especially a community of people or different contacts with whom you communicate in English, it's just going to be like, a bonfire below you, motivating you to keep up your learning, to keep up growing your skills. All right. So first off, we mentioned we're going to be talking about something that is very core to the Real Life Way, and this is growth mindset. This comes from, I believe it originated from a professor of psychology from Stanford. Her name is Carol Dweck, and she wrote a famous book called Mindset, all about this, mostly studying in children. And what's the difference between, children who are gritty, who basically are able to persevere through difficult problems, and those who give up faster? And so she discovered that what's at the core of this is having either a growth or fixed mindset. So what does this have to do with language learning, Thiago?
I think it's all about how you think about learning a language. Like we were touching on with your Portuguese experience, right? For example, being playful about it, being cool with it, being okay to, be embarrassed sometimes. Yeah. If you have a positive attitude towards your learning, we could say that you have a growth mindset. That's one characteristic, actually, of a growth mindset. Instead of maybe having a more negative way of thinking about it, like, I don't want to look silly, or I don't want to make a mistake, I have to be perfect, that is more the fixed mindset type of mentality there. Because the way you think about the process of learning a language dictates your success in the end, actually.
What does that mean if something dictates your success?
It determines, so it influences considerably. Yeah, and that's so true.
So we're all aspiring to have a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. And I think an important detail here, like a caveat, is that it depends on the subject. We might have a more growth mindset or fixed mindset. So it's not something that you either have a fixed mindset with everything, you always have a fixed mindset, or you always have a growth mindset. It depends. Some of us, we have a very growth mindset with one thing, maybe because you studied engineering. You have a very strong growth mindset when it comes to math. But maybe you didn't cultivate so much the artistic side of yourself when you were growing up. And so if you think about painting, or you think about designing, or you think about something that requires more of what we traditionally say, like right-minded thinking, you might have more of a fixed mindset, So it's not something that is black and white or is always the case. So can we actually change if we have a fixed mindset in something, which for many people listening might be the case. I've had many students who they had a fixed mindset when it came to learning English, or even just certain aspects of the language. They had a fixed mindset and growth mindset with others. Is this something people can change?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I would say it's really important to change that, because part of a growth mindset has to do with the belief that your skills and your abilities are not fixed. They are not limited. If you dedicate yourself to something, you can learn it. And, I've been teaching for so many years, and over the years, I have come across learners that many times told me that, for me, it seems so difficult to learn English, but to other people, it seems so easy. Even sometimes, when I'm trying to explain something to a student, and I try to be supportive in the sense that I say, look, this is not really hard. It's quite simple. If you think about it this way, and this way, you see, it's not that hard. Yeah, it's simple or easy. And then the learner would tell me, oh, it's easy for you, 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟, come on. But, when a person says that, oh, it's easy for you, kind of subconsciously, the person is saying that, oh, I believe that it's not easy for me. It's hard for me, but for you or for other people, it is easier. But it's possible for you to change the way you look at it and the way you talk to yourself about this. Yeah. And the question is, why do you feel this way? Why do you feel that learning English is harder for some people? Actually, harder for you, but not for other people.
Yeah, that happens for so many learners, that they see other people doing it and they think, oh, it's easy for them. They have this natural talent, or they have this natural skill, or their parents had more money, could send them to a better school, or they, whatever the case is, right? Whatever the excuse is, that person has something that I don't have. And so they can do it. It's easy for them. It's more opportunistic for them. So yeah, we want to help you to move more towards, even if you've thought that, don't worry, you can move more towards having more of a growth mindset, which our self-talk, the way that we think, the way that we believe about our potential as a human being it's such a crucial element into ultimately what we're able to achieve in our life, be it with learning a language or anything else that you want to achieve. So learning about this is definitely going to help you with your English and anywhere else in your life where you need to have this growth mindset. We were inspired to bring up this topic because recently 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟 and I both listened to a podcast from Huberman Lab. If you haven't ever heard this, he's this guy who takes complex scientific studies and explains them in a way that anyone can understand. So it's really amazing for kind of hacking your biology and hacking other, in this case, your mindset, the way that your brain works and so on. And so I really like the way that he describes this, because I've heard for a long time, I've been using this structure of growth and fixed mindset with myself, with students and so on. But I really liked something that he described in this podcast, that he talks about how do we cultivate this in other people, ourselves, is based on feedback, or even based on encouragement that we give before a challenging activity. A lot of us, we might have grown up hearing things that helped us to produce a fixed mindset, which would be, how Huberman says it, is adjectives. So for example, you're so smart. Oh, you're so great at this. Oh, you're so talented. I know for me, it was the case that like my mom would say these kind of things a lot. I got like a great grade in one of my classes, and she'd say, "Oh, you're so smart." Or I did something on the computer that she doesn't know how to do, and it's like, "Oh, you're so talented. How do you do this so easily?" And I, like, in retrospect, definitely growing up, I had more of a fixed mindset. I did not like difficult, challenging things in general, in most areas. And I've built a growth mindset for myself as an adult. So I would definitely say that for you, it's something that you can do. You can turn things around, even if you are more stuck or stagnant in a fixed mindset. So with a fixed mindset, we use adjectives. With growth mindset, we use verbs. So you work so hard at that, or you put a lot of thought into that project, or it was so creative how you came up with a solution, anything like that. And it could also be, used for encouragement. Like, if I say, "Hey, 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟, you're going to do great on this test because, you've just been studying so hard. You've worked so hard. You're always, whenever you're in difficult situations, you persevere through it." So, it's important that we recultivate our self-talk, how we talk to ourselves, a lot of the things that we were saying before. And also, if we're trying to encourage or give feedback to someone else, be that especially important with children, right? but even if you're trying to encourage a friend or your partner or anything like that.
This is really interesting. I want to ask a follow-up question there. What is the negative impact of praising with adjectives? If I say, for example, oh, you are so smart, you are so talented, great job. What's the problem with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we encourage this fixed mindset, the problem is kind of what I was saying before in my own experience. I didn't like hard things because I didn't want to do anything. You know, if I was told you're so smart or you're so intelligent or you're so talented, I didn't want to do anything that disproved that. So a really great way that you can do that is just by avoiding doing things that may make you seem or feel like you're not smart or like you're not talented, right? So you stick with the things that are easy for you, that you're good at, and you avoid the things that are challenging for you, that you might, the first couple of times you do it, you might not have a great performance on, and so on. But on the other hand, it's really interesting too to look into the research of 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶 is looking at kids that they gave this feedback. They actually like split kids up and they gave some of them the more fixed feedback and some of them the more growth-oriented feedback.
When these 9 and 10-year-olds successfully put together the puzzle, the children are praised for either their intelligence,
wow, you did really well, you must be really smart at these.
Or the effort they made.
Wow, you did really well, you must have tried really hard at these.
And by doing that, the ones that got the growth feedback, they were their scores improved so much because basically they were being told, you know, they worked really hard or they really persevered or they really focused on that problem. And so they continued doing that. They continued like going for harder and harder problems, working on, when they were given the choice of working on an easy problem or a hard problem, they always went for the harder problem. And the people who had the fixed feedback given to them, they would tend to go for easy things that would get them more of that positive but fixed praise that they were craving.
Yeah, it makes sense because, you know, when you praise the person, it's like you are reinforcing a certain identity, yeah, in that person. So I'm thinking about my son now, yeah. So going back to the grade example, if my son gets an A on a test, instead of saying, oh, good job, you're so smart, or you're so talented, that's why you got the A, instead of saying that, you focus on the action. Oh, great job. You see, you got an A because you studied for 20 minutes every day before the test. You see, you dedicated yourself, you pushed yourself, and because you studied or because you reserved time to do it, you got a good grade. So focusing on the action, right? Focusing on what the person did, yeah, so that the person, you know, associates success or accomplishment with action, right? And not just, oh, I'm already good, I'm already cool, and, you know, I don't have to do anything, right?
And we mentioned with self-talk, it's good to catch ourselves doing this if we're talking to ourselves in a way that we can recognize, oh, like that thought that was pretty fixed of me. You know, I thought like if maybe you're working on a new grammatical structure and the thought occurs to you that, oh man, you know, I'm just bad at grammar, or I'm just not the kind of person who can learn grammar. If you're finding that you're making those kind of excuses in your head, it's like catch yourself in that moment and say, you know, that's not true. I just haven't worked hard enough. I just need to get at this a little bit longer. I just need to study this more. And maybe it is the case. This isn't to deny that some people do have more of a disposition to something than others. It's like, I'm never going to be a great basketball player because I'm not, you know, I'm not tall. I don't have a natural jump and everything. But if I really were passionate about basketball and I really wanted to get good at it, I could become better than someone who was naturally talented at that by working harder. So I would say this for myself. I've talked about this on the podcast before, that my brother definitely has more of this knack for learning languages, yet he's not invested in it. You know, pretty much he hasn't taken a class since high school. And so now, you know, we went to actually Mexico this year. Now for him, he's forgotten pretty much all of his Spanish. I mean, I would give him kudos because he's confident and he doesn't mind, you know, playing around and like trying a little bit to communicate what he can. But of course, my Spanish is much better because it's something that I was passionate about. I worked really hard at. I took university classes. You know, of course, living here also helps me. But despite that, there's many languages. Now I'm learning Portuguese. I'm not living in Brazil. So same for 𝗥𝗲𝗹𝗟𝗶. Never lived and traveled to the United States or the UK or anywhere else. So it's all about persistence, putting in the hard work, like really being dedicated to achieving the level that you want to have in that, whatever it is that you're learning. In this case, English. Yeah,
the cool thing is that if you start using more verbs or actions when talking to yourself about the learning process, that will naturally draw you to do more things. So like you said, I mean, don't say, oh, I'm very bad at grammar, for example. Yeah. You say, oh, I just haven't studied enough. I need to study more, or I need to set aside some time, on this day to study. See, and then yeah, you focus on action, on doing things, even positive as well. I mean, I don't think that happens very frequently, but there might be some people out there who are a little bit more, I don't know, overconfident, and they might say, oh, I'm so good at English already. I'm so good. Yeah, but don't do that. This is a way of limiting your potential, right? I mean, I say, oh, I've already, again, focusing on the action, right? On the verb. I've already accomplished so much, but I can learn even more.
Yeah, that's so important what you just said, because that could be even worse in some cases, that you're going to self-sabotage yourself from really getting to the upper level. And this has happened to me in learning languages, and I've seen this happen to so many people. They get stuck on that upper intermediate plateau, which, that they're not breaking through to the real mastery of the language. And a lot of times it's because they've gotten to that place. It's like really comfortable where you're able to communicate, you make some mistakes and whatnot, but people can understand you. You in general have like enough vocabulary. You might be not having a very broad vocabulary and using very beautiful use of the language all the time, but you're able to communicate, and that's such a comfortable place to be. And a lot of people self-sabotage because they've already gotten that place where they feel like it's good enough, and they tell themselves it's good enough, so they're not doing the things to stretch themselves, step outside their comfort zone, and really push themselves up into that next upper echelon of mastery. So something in preparing for this talk, we were discussing small wins, the importance of small wins, and it's something we've talked about a lot, right? These can help you really profoundly to start feeling the benefits of that growth mindset. So I believe you were sharing before a story that you had related to this, right?
Yeah, I did. It's a great way to build up your confidence, celebrating your small victories or small wins. I remember to this day, the very first time I ever had a conversation with an American, and it was mind-blowing because, I only realized after the conversation ended that I had just had a 5-minute conversation with a native, It was back in my first job at the drugstore. At that point, I had been studying English by myself regularly for 3 years already. But back then, I mean, I didn't have much opportunity to speak, right? That was not near as much technology as we have nowadays available for that. So I had spent the 3 years prior just studying, with books or talking to myself. But then at that job, I mean, there was this one day when an American customer came in, and I had a short exchange with the person. I don't know now if he was a man or a woman, but we talked about, hey, where you're from in the U.S. I mean, the city, the state. What are you doing here in Brazil? Are you here for fun, or are you here for work? And then I would say my memorized phrases already. Oh, I love English. I've been studying English by myself for 3 years. By the way, what do you think of my English? These are all memorized sentences that I already had, that I had already practiced on myself, So I used those. It was a short, simple interaction. But when the person left, then it dawned on me, oh, I just talked to an American for 5 minutes. And I had never taken a formal course. And then I celebrated that. I remember feeling like really good. This is something so simple and small, but it's important that you do that in your own journey, right? Celebrate your small wins. If you remember a new word that you are trying to remember, celebrate that. Like, oh yeah, I remembered it. Again, using the verb. Yeah, not really like I'm good, but I remembered the word. Awesome, Or, oh, I had just had a short conversation. Awesome, That's going to build up your confidence.
That's a really great story. Izzy actually shared with us here, who's, our producer of sorts, here in the comments, a quote that he just thought of based on the story that Thiago was saying, that every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. I believe that's from James Clear from Atomic Habits, which is a really fantastic book for building habits. That's another great way that you can develop more of a growth mindset, is by having those habits of whatever is most difficult for you, studying grammar, or working on your pronunciation, or learning the phrases that you need in case you bump into an American wherever you're working. And that's very true. It made me think about a similar experience that I had when I was actually the first time I was living in Belo Horizonte in Brazil, that I was living in, I think I was there maybe for 5 months at this point. and I was living in a república, which is like the translation I've heard used is like a fraternity, but it's not exactly the same. It's basically student housing where you're living with a lot of people. And so I was living, I think, with 8 other guys. Not my best living experience, but I had one roommate who was like really, really nice and friendly and stuff. And one of the probably shortly after I was living there, I remember being in the living room and he was smoking, and we started like chatting, and we got into like a philosophical conversation. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but it's like something that's not an easy conversation. And there was at some point during the conversation, just in my head, I realized like I can't believe I'm talking about this in Portuguese. Like, this is amazing. And I think that it's this thing that the reason I'm bringing this up, and the reason I think that your story is so great is because so many learners tell themselves that I can't speak English yet. Like, I'll study more and then I'll be able to speak. I need to learn more grammar tenses. I haven't mastered all the grammar tenses, then I'll be able to speak. Or I need to work on my pronunciation, then I'll be able to speak, or whatever the excuse is. Maybe like you want to make sure that you're at a certain level, you've passed an exam. And there's a proverb that I used to always tell my students if I heard them making excuses, and there's 7 days in the week and some day isn't one of them. So basically what this means is that we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on. Some day isn't a day of the week. So basically what this proverb is teaching us is that today is the day. Just do it today. So if you're the person who is telling yourself that my English isn't good enough yet, or I don't have the talent, or I'll never be able to speak, just put yourself out there. Have that difficult, that uncomfortable moment of speaking. And you're going to surprise yourself. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be difficult the first times you do it. But just like Thiago, you can prepare yourself for it. You can learn some phrases that are going to help you to make the conversation flow in a way that you're able to be a little bit more confident. You can do a script and like have your perfect introduction, so you're able to talk about all the things that likely might come up. What do you do for work? What do you study? Where do you live? What is it like there? What do you like to do in your free time? And so on. So you should know all these things, but stop putting off something that you can do today and that you're just making excuses for. If you're this person, so many people will also use the excuse of I don't have anyone to speak with, right? That can be a very convenient excuse. So if that's the case, that's exactly why we created the RealLife English app, because you can go on there any time of day, anywhere. Maybe you're having a coffee break at work. You can press a button and you'll instantly be connected to another English speaker in another part of the world. You can use this to virtually travel, meet people from all over the place, discover all sorts of different cultures. And you can never again make the excuse that I have no one to speak with, because you can speak right now in this moment. So even pause this podcast, go give it a try if you haven't already, and get over yourself, get over your excuses. So we have speaking of the app, a shout out to one of our very special users.
All right, this one goes to Zura, and Zura says, I should say that your channel and the app are the best. They help me a lot, and thank you so much for your amazing work. I really appreciate that. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Zura. Thanks so much for taking the time to leave us a nice comment on that recent lesson. And you, dear learner, if you are enjoying these, then be sure you can also leave us a comment, give us a 5-star review in your favorite podcast listening service, be that Apple Podcast, Spotify, or elsewhere, so we can find you and also shout you out. And just like Zura, be sure to give the app a try, practice your speaking, listen to these podcasts with full digital transcripts so you don't miss a single thing, and you can even study the vocab and so much more. So give it a try. It's free to download. Just look for RealLife English in your favorite app store or in the description or show notes of this lesson. So we're going to be trying something new today, Thiago. We're going to be doing a question of the day. So yeah, let's have at it.
All right, the question is, hi Ethan and Thiago. Thanks for this podcast. I actually have a question to ask you guys. My question is it right to use the connected words when writing or typing? For instance, including words like gonna, oughta, tryna, wanna, etc. when writing, typing an official document or letter. Sometimes someone can be too used to it and they don't even realize that they are using it in an important document. Using contractions, like speaking contractions in written form,
and
right?
connected speech. What I would say with this, like on official documents, you shouldn't use it. On important documents, you shouldn't use it. And when you're speaking informally, I think that it depends on the connected speech. I was going to actually look at some of the examples that Deborah gave us here. And there's, so gonna and wanna are two of the ones that they put there. I would definitely use these in texting all the time. Gonna, wanna, gotta, those ones are very common. But like oughta, tryna, those aren't, like we don't tend to use those in a written way, maybe because they're not as common. So they're probably not as generally accepted as like almost being standalone words in informal writing. But yeah, I think that in informal writing, we're definitely much more lax about this.
Yeah, I have seen these contractions a lot in songs, but that's an exception. In music, is okay for you to see that, like gonna, oughta, tryna, wanna, because it's often written, the music is often written the way the singer sings it. Yeah, but as you are asking here, for official documents, for those kinds of documents, you're going to be writing in a more formal way. And one of the features of formal English is actually no contractions at all. You write everything in full. So not even I'm going to, but I am going to, like no apostrophes at all. So if you are writing something more formal for a test or for a document, no abbreviations of any sort.
So you, dear listener, viewer, watcher, whoever is out there, if you want us to answer your question, this is something new we're going to be doing. So we would love to get your burning questions that, we're looking for things too that aren't like super simple. Don't just ask us what's the difference between the simple past and the present perfect, because you can do a Google search or ask ChatGPT and get a really good answer there. But if you have a burning question that you just can't seem to find the answer to, just like Deborah had a really great one today, then you can leave those in the comments if you're on YouTube, or otherwise send us an email at hello@reallifeglobal.com. Or if you want to practice your speaking, like we've been encouraging you today, you could leave us a voice message at speakpipe.com/reallifeenglish. And we'll also put these links in the description, in the show notes and so on, so you can find it easily. And yeah, we're looking forward to your burning questions. So before we end today, wanted to let you guys know that if you are enjoying these lessons, if you're learning a lot, if you feel like you're growing as a human being, and anything else, any other benefits you're getting from this, the free way you can support us, of course, is sharing this with your friends so they can also start learning with us. But maybe you don't have any friends that are English learners. So you can leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcast or Spotify, because this helps more people to discover the podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, of course, you can subscribe and like this video, because once again, that helps YouTube to know that you're enjoying it. You want more content like this, and it will also help it to reach more people. So we super appreciate it. And remember that no matter what divides us, that which unites us is far greater. So go out there, don't let your limiting beliefs limit you any longer. Start practicing a growth mindset, and we'll see you back here next week. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. All right. So, Thiago, is it actually possible for English learners to remember everything that they're learning in English?
Maybe that's not really the problem. It's not like you are forgetting words. It's not about remembering per se, but about maybe moving or transferring some words and expressions you want into your active vocabulary box so you can start using them more often.